Sam and Max were created by Steve Purcell and starred in their own comic book series which started in 1987. Their first foray into video games was 1993's Sam and Max Hit the Road, a well-loved and highly regarded point-and-click adventure developed by LucasArts. When a sequel to that game was cancelled, TellTale Games stepped in and created an episodic series of stories, Sam and Max Season 1, with the first releasing back in 2006. The 6 episodes were later brought together and renamed Sam and Max Save the World, and it is a remastered version of that series which is now released on the Switch. Does it point the way, or does it fail to click into gear? I'm Glen Bolger, thank you to the publishing team for the review code, and now let's find out.
Good to have you back, little buddy.
What are we waiting for?
The 6 episodes included in Sam and Max Save the World each tell their own story, however they do all link together to eventually tell a tale involving hypnosis, and they will see you travelling to a variety of settings in order to get to the bottom of things. I won't say much more than this so as not to spoil anything, but I will just give special mention to the excellent writing and use of humour throughout the episodes, something that we will touch on again as the review goes on. Sam and Max Save the World is a point and click adventure game. You must solve a number of puzzles and speak to a variety of characters to move the story along, and you can choose to play any of the episodes at any time or play them of course sequentially. In classic point and click fashion, the world you inhabit is filled with items and points of interest. You will be able to pick some of these items up and store them in your inventory for later use, and it would be wise to keep an eye on the points of interest around you. Some are just there to build the world or allow for a humorous comment from our duo, but others will need to be interacted with, usually in conjunction with one of the aforementioned items in order to activate the next cutscene or story segment. Even if an object doesn't do anything initially, it's worth bearing in mind that you may need to come back to it later. Controlling Sam, you must move between a few different scenes within each episode, again with certain places locked away until you meet the necessary story requirements. As you go further, you will be able to use your car to travel between scenes. Generally, this just consists of a cutscene, however sometimes it will lead to a driving segment with you needing to stop a car and get them to pull over. For the most part, the puzzles are simple and used more as a vehicle to move the story along rather than being genuine head scratchers, and characters will even prompt you with extra lines of dialogue if you aren't really getting it. This isn't always the case though, and there are times where a leap of logic will be required, or to be more specific, the logic of a Looney Tunes character must be adopted for you to get into the mindset that will lead to the right course of action becoming apparent to you. This is most evident when having to figure out where to use particular items, and definitely plays into that comic book style that the game goes for. A big part of the appeal of the game is the humour that it exudes. You will spend just as much time watching the interactions between characters as you will exploring environment, and whilst the humour is all quite obvious and on the nose, it still works incredibly well and is very charming. Sam and Max's personalities are different enough for them to work well as a team, and their dialogue bounces off one another perfectly for that reason. The supporting cast are equally as funny, and you will meet a huge host of wacky characters across the 6 episodes. Interacting with them is done via dialogue choices, some of which are fairly inconsequential as you will work your way through all of the lines of dialogue anyway, whereas at other times you will need to get the dialogue choice correct in order to get somebody to talk further, and there are even instances where you can switch between Sam and Max to set up a good cop, bad cop situation. It would have been nice if there was a way to pull up your current objective just to see it as a reminder at times. This would have been useful when returning to the game after a day or so away. I did find myself wandering around more than I would have liked after an extended period away from the game, having forgotten what it was I needed to be doing, and it just would have been a quick and easy fix. In terms of controls, things are kept very simple. The left stick controls Sam, whereas moving the right stick will highlight any hotspots that are near you. Holding down L will highlight all hotspots contained within your current area. A is your contextual button, and pressing Y will bring up your item inventory screen. It can be a little awkward selecting the exact hotspot you want with the right stick, especially when there are a few bunched together, but it's never a big issue. Pushing the stick in the general direction of the item will see it selected eventually, and it doesn't take that long. The driving sections mentioned earlier, whilst brief, are a bit awkward to control when you are having to shoot at other vehicles. They are quick in nature and aren't a major issue again, but just a bit cumbersome. In handheld mode, the game supports touchscreen play with you moving Sam with your finger and being able to tap on points of interest. This actually works very well. Gameplay is fun and very much humour led. It uses a lot of the staples of point and click games as you would expect of a game that is 14 years old, and whilst it would have benefited from a few puzzles that are maybe a bit more difficult, it scores 15 out of 20. Controls work well, with them being about as good as they could be without of course the use of a mouse, and they score 14 out of 20. In terms of the visuals, Sam & Max Saves the World has received a bit of a graphical overhaul. Colours appear to have been boosted when compared to the original, leading to some sections that definitely pop more than they used to. Light and shadow in general are just a bit more pronounced in this new version. The characters and backgrounds themselves also have more of a hand-drawn look to them this time round, and the new style really does look quite nice. Not necessarily better than the original, but great in its own right. The hand-drawn style does make things look slightly more jagged in comparison due to the thick black outlines, and this did look a little odd at times, but it does help polish the game up for sure. The use of comic book style tabs for the names of objects is also a great touch. Audio wise, well, I mentioned the humour earlier, and this is only able to be as good as it is due to the quality of the voice acting. I had read that Sam & Max had been described as gaming's first sitcom back in the day, and this is an incredibly apt description. Sam's dry humour, delivered with a film noir take, is at odds with Max's hyperactive manner and odd one-liners.
Max, I want you to play the boy.
Yes! Boy! That is so me!
And Sam, you play the dog.
Oh. See you later, Bosco.
Remember, we never had this conversation.
What conversation?
The conversation we just had.
No, see, he was just acting like he'd already forgotten the conversation.
What conversation?
Oh, brother.
Talking of film noir, the soundtrack contains music reminiscent of this particular era, with a jazz score, and this remastered version includes 5 new tracks, but it also gives a heavy 1960s vibe with the comic book style and certain musical riffs, reminding me very much of things like the Batman TV show from that particular decade. Visuals certainly look like they've had a fresh coat of paint thrown at them, and the fuller colour scheme accentuates the comic book roots of the characters further still. They score 17 out of 20. Audio sets the tone in terms of great voice acting, as well as a score that evokes a few different eras, and it scores 18 out of 20. Sam & Max Save the World costs £15.29, $19.99 or 28 Australian dollars 95. I couldn't find a definitive euro price. I am expecting it to be around 17 to 19 euros 99. It will take up 832 megabytes of your system storage. The package includes all 6 episodes that made up Series 1 back in the day, and they generally take a couple of hours, give or take, each to complete, barring you getting hopelessly stuck on a puzzle, of course. I do feel it would have benefited from being a few pounds cheaper in all honesty, because there isn't a huge amount of replay value. But once you are into them and having fun, I'd say most people will be satisfied that they are getting their money's worth, and value scores 14 out of 20. To conclude, Sam & Max Save the World is a great collection of 6 episodes from the vaults of TellTale games. The gaming's first sitcom tag that I mentioned earlier really does sum things up. Not just in terms of the humour, but you will also be watching as much as playing at times, and when playing, the puzzles are perhaps a little too simple, bar ones that involve the occasional leap of logic, or at least the need to think like a cartoon character. With all that said though, if you do enjoy point and click games, this one has all the elements, particularly that humour and charm, and is well worth playing again all of these years later, or of course, still worth playing if you are experiencing it for the first time. Sam & Max Save the World gets a SwitchUp score of 78%. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Which classic point and click games would you love to see come to the Switch? Personally, I would take Maniac Mansion or Indiana Jones Fate of Atlantis, or if we're talking specifically about TellTale, I love The Wolf Among Us. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe, and until next time, happy gaming.